Holding Company in Packingtown, Illinois.
We employ experienced butchers who work in an assembly line to quickly and efficiently bring our meals to your table. Here at Fitzgerald's Meats, we butcher and pack beef, pork, lamb, and veal. Our facilities are up to date and well equipped to process all of our different meats. Although most of our employees are immigrants, we provide exceptional working conditions. Our well-trained management team is caring and empathetic towards our employees, encouraging them to do their best every day. Fitzgerald's Meats thinks that sanitation is of utmost importance, and we ensure that our meats are kept away from any sort of contamination that could be detrimental to our customers' health.
Fitzgerald's Meats, Fitzgerald's Meats, we're gonna meet your needs.
The Gilded Age was a time of progress, in which multiple advances in technology and production were made from scientific discoveries. The greatest advances during this time include factories, electricity, railroad development, and oil production. Despite these advances, factories became corrupt due to the overly powerful monopolies.
I'm the controller of the railroad.
And the unfair working conditions workers constantly suffered from. These conditions and the low wages caused employees to unite in the creation of labor unions, which led to the development of organizations such as the Knights of Labor and the American Federation of Labor. The Gilded Age was also noted as a time of heavy immigration. Though immigrants came to America in search of a better life and a taste of the American dream, they were shoved into the overcrowded slums of the cities and were highly discriminated against. Though the lives of African Americans in the U.S. improved during this Gilded time, racism, as well as white supremacy, were still very present. Segregation was considered legal, and things were far from equal.
As business in America began to grow, so did immigration. Millions of immigrants poured into America in hopes of striking riches and bettering their lives. When the immigrants arrived in America, they experienced scandal, bad living and working conditions, and received low wages. They were also heavily discriminated against and easily replaceable in the labor force. Many immigrants flocked to the cities, desperately searching for a job, but because most were unskilled, they were turned away. American business owners, including marketmen, took advantage of the cultural and language barrier between Americans and immigrants. Immigrant families who had come to America seeking a better life found themselves alone, homeless, and without work. As a support system, ethnic communities such as Little Italy were formed, where immigrants could help each other survive the hardships of daily life. When immigrants traveled over to America, they all expected to live the American dream, a dream where immigrants believed that they could begin from humble origins and eventually become rich. After they arrived, however, they received no opportunity to drastically better themselves. The corruption and struggle for wealth within big corporations made it impossible for immigrants to achieve this American dream. They were defenseless against the power of big business and corruption. America was run under a plutocracy, or a country governed by wealth. Poor immigrants fell victim to plutocrats of major corporations and as a result could not become wealthy themselves.
In the industrial era, monopolies appeared when small entrepreneurs learned to consolidate their businesses into massive corporations in seek of a larger profit. The profit was in turn so large that the corporation was able to completely dominate and gain complete control over the entire market. This meant that the company could set their prices at whatever level they desired, as there was no competition to stop them. These businessmen became extremely wealthy and corrupt, and in turn, workers suffered horribly. Some of the most powerful corporations include John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company, Andrew Carnegie's Carnegie Steel, Cornelius Vanderbilt's New York Central Railroad System, and J.P. Morgan's banking house. In the beginning of the industrial era, the government maintained a laissez-faire principle and were relatively hands-off concerning business. However, as the voice against corporations grew louder, the government attempted to rein some sort of control. Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed any business that restricted free trade. In addition, in an effort to stop the railroad monopolies, Congress passed the Interstate Commerce Act in 1887 to attempt to control and limit the unfair prices. Between 1880 and 1900, cities in the United States grew at a dramatic rate. Owing most of their population growth to the expansion of industry, U.S. cities grew by about 15 million people in the 2 decades before 1900. Many of those who helped account for the population growth of cities were immigrants arriving from around the world. A steady stream of people from rural America also migrated to the cities during this period. As American cities grew larger and more crowded with the changing times, practical forces operated to bring out improvements. When one city undertook improvements, others tended to follow suit, spurred on by local pride and the booster spirit. Gradually, the basic facilities of urban living were improved. Changes and improvements such as paved streets and incandescent lamps were accomplished, boosting city life. Urban transportation underwent enormous changes with the invention of the electric trolley car. For women, the factory had almost completely replaced the household as the seat of manufacturing. Many women had no choice but to leave the domestic sphere to make a living. Textile mills and the sewing trades absorbed a large percentage of women, but in all fields, women were paid substantially lower than men. Women made up the overwhelming majority of salespersons and cashiers in the big new department stores. Educated, middle-class women also dominated the profession of nursing that developed alongside the expanding medical profession and the establishment of large urban hospitals. During this time, education was also becoming more important. The number of colleges and universities increased, and the aspirations of the nation's youth were rising. Important advances were also made in women's higher education. Beginning with the Vassar College, the opportunity for young women to pursue serious academic work gradually expanded. However, the only professional careers easily available to women were nursing, teaching, and social work. The push for women's rights, with suffrage in the forefront, also gathered momentum during this time. Regardless of these changes, however, throughout the 19th century, 95% of married women remained at home.
The last quarter of the 19th century, because of the rise of imperialists and anti-imperialists, citizens' interest in elections and politics peaked. Everybody wanted their opinion on imperialism and how it would affect America to be heard. The lackluster presidents are identified from Hayes to Harrison and lasted roughly between 1870 and 1892. These presidents demonstrated little interest in dealing with the nation's urgent issues. Rutherford Hayes, James Garfield, Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, and Benjamin Harrison were other presidents of the time. 1890 marked the end of the frontier, and Americans found that they could no longer expand westward. Even though it was impossible for America to expand further, citizens still believed in the idea of manifest destiny. After the start of imperialism, Americans sought more resources to support their increasing population, wealth, and industrial production. The Panic of 1893 led many businessmen to believe that the growing industries had overexpanded. To maintain their authority in the American economy, big business leaders sought foreign colonies to expand their markets further. Americans found themselves in a competition with Europe to acquire overseas empires. Because of this, Americans were spurred on to colonize faster and gain as many trade routes as possible. Political acts such as the Roosevelt-Crowley and Platt Amendments, as well as publicizing the agreements formerly made under the Monroe Doctrine, ensured Americans' colony security. The Spanish-American War of 1898 was a pivotal point in American history. It originated in 1895 as Cuba struggled for independence from Spain. Spain took brutal steps towards stopping the rebellion, which offended the Americans. U.S. newspapers publicly displayed the terror and cruelty imposed by the Spanish forces, which persuaded American citizens to side with the Cuban rebels. The U.S. government made the effort to declare Cuba's rights to independence, demanding the withdrawal of Spain's armed forces from the island. However, it was the sinking of the USS Maine in the Havana harbor that was the final straw with the Spanish government. Spain declared war on the United States on April 24th, followed by a U.S. declaration of war on the 25th. After several battles, Spain surrendered to America on July 17th. By the Treaty of Paris, signed December 10, 1898, Spain renounced all claim to Cuba, ceded Guam and Puerto Rico to the United States, and transferred sovereignty over to the Philippines to the United States for $20 million. The victorious United States emerged from the war as a world power, with several overseas possessions and a new stake in international politics that would soon lead to displaying a determining role in the affairs of Europe.
The populist movement was a revolt by farmers in the South and Midwest against the Democratic and Republican parties for ignoring their interests and difficulties. It was triggered by the agricultural depression that seriously injured farmers everywhere. For over a decade, farmers were suffering from crop failures, falling prices, poor marketing, and lack of credit facilities. Many farmers were in debt due to a drought that affected the Midwest in the 1800s. At the same time, prices for Southern cotton had dropped. These disasters, combined with resentment against railroads, moneylenders, grain elevator owners, and others with whom farmers did business, led farmers to organize. The populist movement began as the Alliance Movement, but eventually the farmers organized into the People's, or Populist, Party. In the presidential campaign of 1892, in which the Populists nominated James B. Weaver, the most significant advocation of the Populists was their call for the unlimited coinage of silver. The Populists saw themselves not as a persecuted minority, but as a victimized majority. However, their effort to unite white and black farmers in the South failed miserably. They were accused of challenging white supremacy, which greatly injured the party. In all, the party made no significant impression. After the election of 1892, the question of silver became paramount to the voters. The Free Silver Movement was the advocacy of the unlimited coinage of silver. In truth, the issue of gold versus silver was superficial. The important question was what, if anything, should be done to check the deflationary spiral. The declining price level benefited people with fixed incomes, but hurt most others. Supporters of free silver included owners of silver mines in the West, farmers who believed that an expanded currency would increase the price of their crops, and debtors who hoped it would enable them to pay their debts more easily. Traditionally, the U.S. coined both silver and gold. However, with the Coinage Act of 1873, the metal had been demonetized. However, when McKinley won the election of 1896, he returned the country to the gold standard, which made possible still greater changes as the U.S. moved into the 20th century.
It's a little bit.
I'm the controller of the railroad. Wow.
That's
That's Cuba.
Cuba's gone. Gone to shreds.
Sad, alone, with no one to hold, and hungry.